Uh, there we go. We got there. So just to give you a little bit of background, I know Ryan already mentioned this was part of the Housing Readiness Incentive Grant through MSHDA. But what that grant is basically Ishpeming received $50,000 through this grant to support their housing development goals through land use policy, master plan updates, things like that to update how they could open up more housing availability. And Ishpeming has 3,085 parcels. Like most cities, it's having some housing needs, but it also has a limited amount of land and its own unique set of environmental constraints. They also were very lucky to have had a really good TMA done recently. So they knew exactly what their housing needs were, in what quantities and in what types and in what time frame. But connecting all of those sort of disparate pieces wasn't necessarily like an easy challenge to come up with. So what we wanted to do was create a tool that allowed us to systematically assess every parcel by the same criteria, looking at both its developmental feasibility on an environmental level, on a like ordinance size level, and then also comparing that to what the TMA was requiring. So the different kinds of housing types, what you need to develop townhouses is different from single families, different from what you'd be looking for commercial loft development. So we wanted to create a system that would allow us to look at all of those different factors per parcel. And doing that as like a single person would cost way more than $50,000 to do. So we kind of wanted to come up with a tool that would allow us to do that. And I have to remember that I'm changing things on this screen. So just to kind of give you an idea of the Ishpeming housing needs, they had a pretty big ask in their TMA. The TMA wanted to see single 14-family home or single-family homes built annually for the next 5 years, 4 downtown lofts annually for the next 5 years, 8 townhouses, 10 small multifamily units. And just to kind of put in context, multifamily units here, that is like the missing middle kind of multifamily, not large-scale apartment buildings, but like duplexes, triplexes, ADUs, that sort of thing. And again, this is annually for 5 years, not all at once. So a big housing need, a lot of gaps in the supply, and a lot to consider in terms of looking at feasibility. The other component of this that isn't listed out in the TMA, but Ryan is also going into master plan updates to redo their housing section, as well as some ordinance revisions to allow for more housing. So we wanted a tool that not only allowed for more development, but also opened up their ordinances to make that development possible. So we created a methodology that tried to build in these sort of 3 layers in doing that. The first thing we did was from the county, we purchased the tax assessor's data for the past year. That gave us information like ownership data, parcel size, current tax assessed value, the way it was currently being taxed. So was it residential and vacant? If it was 402, that meant that it was, theoretically undeveloped vacant land. Was it improved commercial already? We got its zoning, and we got like its occupancy status. So we could tell if it was rental, if it was somebody's being taxed as somebody's part-time home, or if it was someone's like year-round resident. So that was kind of the backbone of this. But we also wanted to take that and run it past a development feasibility layer. So we started calculating layers like, was it lot size compliant? So we wrote some code using the current ordinance. For a single family home, a parcel had to be, X acreage. So we ran that past the acreage of every single parcel, and it just shot back. Was it compliant or was it not for residential zoning? That's a really simplified way of explaining it, but that's essentially this first layer of logic that we created. Was it in the right zone? Was it compliant if it was? Then we also looked at ownership. So we ranked things as like, is it publicly owned? So if it's vacant and publicly owned, privately owned and vacant, things like that. So we started kind of parsing out what kind of information we could get from there. We also looked at like assessment values to decide like if something's being taxed really, really low, you know, is that something that the city might want to try and purchase to do redevelopment? Things like that. So we started kind of creating those sorts of buckets first. The next thing we wanted to do is consider environmental constraints. So then we did some spatial joins with some like USDA soil maps that gave us slope information. Obviously, you've been in Ishpeming, you know, there's big rocky outcrops that are not great for development. We also got information like bedrock depth from that, flooding frequency. We got information from Eagle about brownfields and Part 201 contamination sites. We were able to sort of create a spatial join with that parcel data, and then we were able to give each of those like wetland intersections. We were able to kind of give everything this composite score to feed into some of that development feasibility, to kind of weed out things that were not going to be easy for development. And then finally, we wanted to create this third layer of logic that weighed the different types of market demand. Obviously, if you have a 2-acre parcel, when we know that townhouses are going to be the hardest thing to place in Ishpeming, we don't want to waste that on a single family home. Not waste, but it could develop a lot of those townhouses when we have other places that might be better suited for single family. So then we wanted to run other levels of logic to kind of match parcel characteristics to these higher priority housing development types. So that's just kind of the backbone of how we were thinking about this and how we sort of went about parsing it together. And just to kind of give you an example, I was talking about calculated fields was a really big part of how we went about this. I don't know who in here is a data nerd or is familiar with ArcGIS, but essentially with the right data, you can create a field and then calculate it. Not unlike any of you who might be familiar with Excel, maybe, but type in a formula, it returns what it finds in that spreadsheet. So we were doing things like coming up with development readiness fields. If a property was classed as residential, classed as vacant, in an appropriate zone, already compliant for that zone to be developed and didn't have any environmental barriers. If those 4 things were already there, we classed that as development ready. For like the target market, how we took that to then assign it to its target market analysis is we added extra layers into that, right? So if all of those same things are true, but say it's over an acre, we stopped putting it in the single family category. We would put it towards townhouse. For something like a loft, we would be looking at a different set of characteristics. Is it commercial? Is it already developed? And does it have a specific SEV in place? If so, you know, this could be a suitable site for loft development, that sort of thing. So we were able to do all 3,085 parcels systematically this way. That does have its own set of, you know, limitations, right? Churches have very low SEV values because they're not taxed like regular things. So then we also added community amenity layers so that they could turn that sort of thing on. You know, publicly owned, low tax properties that are large and vacant might turn out parks. So we turned on toggleable layers so that you can overlay that. And if you're really interested in a parcel, you won't want to be looking at parks or churches, most likely. And then this just explains how that environmental constraint scoring worked. Things with a 0 constraint score, that's because it was added, it isn't as logical as it sounds. 0 is bad, 10 is really good on the environmental constraint score, but That's just me not having thought out how I worded that right. So that's sort of the explanations of the underpinning of it. I am going to attempt to show it to you without messing this whole thing up because I'm going to have to share a different screen. And I'll actually show you the map that we are giving to the city, as opposed to the kind of messy background map that we made in-house at CUPPAD for us, like where the analysis was done. What we are actually delivering to, all right, let me stop this share and share a new screen here. What we're actually delivering to, yeah, Ryan, I'm glad you're getting up preemptively to help me.
Just checking the chat.
I think. Interesting. This says it's shared on mine, but it's not shared up here. Do you know why it is not sharing on this, but it is in theory sharing on that?
Can you move it over to your what's called?
Oh, look at that. Thank you for that brilliant idea.
To restart share.
Yes. Okay. So this is the final,
I think you did.
I think you,
oh yeah, I got you now. So this is the dashboard that we're creating for the city that has all of those different layers we talked about. It opens with this little splash screen that'll explain how you are meant to navigate it, you know, how to toggle the layers on and off, and what's in here, how it was funded, that sort of stuff. And ooh, I can hardly see over here. So you can turn on these layers and you can see legend on the other side. And the thing we wanted to build in with any of this is that no matter what layer you have turned on, you get the same information every parcel you open. So when you open this up, you can see its parcel ID, its property address, its school district, how it's zoned. For those of you who aren't fluent in tax assessor property type code, anything ending in 02 means it's classed as vacant. Anything in the 400s means it's residential. So this is a residential vacant property in a commercial zone currently. It's owned by Ishpeming Public Schools. You can see it's, you know, taxable value and assessed value are zero, probably because it's, you know, school property. But then you can see all of these calculated fields. You know, it's not a high priority because of probably the fact it's the schools. So that wasn't a good one to open with, but I am craning my neck backwards. This is not my best. So, okay, if green is ready, so say we click into green, you can see its parcel ID, its property address, its lot size compliance. You can see who owns it. You can see that it's vacant residential land. It's got its legal description. You can see all the ways we calculated it against other criteria. So, you know, if you're a developer and you want to see what maybe the best kind of development property is here, or maybe somebody approaches you about this parcel and you're the planning commission and you're trying to decide if you want to allow someone to develop something there, but you see that it's been flagged as a high priority for, you know, single family housing. You've got that information right there. You've got its environmental scores. You've got slope gradients. You've got flooding frequency. Its rating for buildings with or without basements. Its septic tank absorption field dominant condition. Its dominant soil order. So lots of development pertinent information, as well as like information about how it might be acquired or how it is owned. And then there's other layers that you can like stack things on top of each other. So if you wanted to see development ready parcels that were also public and vacant, you could see where those intersected. So this parcel here is publicly owned, it is vacant, and it is in theory ready to develop. So it's owned by Habitat for Humanity. It is currently being classed as vacant. We've got its legal description. We can see that it's really mostly just something that we're targeting for single family. It wouldn't require any zoning changes. It doesn't have, according to this, high amounts of environmental constraints. So that might be something that could help Ishpeming know that they might want to reach out to Habitat for Humanity and see if there's some kind of partnership that could be developed. So that's sort of the tool without trying to like infinitely parse it and make you guys sit through me clicking through a million of these little parcels. I think you get the gist of what's in each of these. Of course, there's some limitations with this. One being it's a stamp in time. Tax assessor data doesn't stay static year after year. You know, this is 2024 tax assessor data. There's information that isn't captured in there. I've already mentioned, like, is it a church? Is it a school? You can see who owns it, but that doesn't always account to how it's being used. So, you know, the people in Ishpeming, when we presented this, there was things like that they knew automatically without it having to be in that card. They already knew, like, oh, well, we wouldn't click on that parcel anyway, because we know that that's alcal, right? So it's really most useful for folks who live in that community because they're going to already know what's worth clicking into and what's not. But it does offer a lot of information and it can weigh a lot of things really quickly. For folks like Brian who are doing zoning updates, he can look at things like too small. And you can see that some of these properties are developed right next to it, right? Which can signify when Ishpeming is considering something like changing lot size requirements in areas where all of the other houses around it are non-compliant already. It wouldn't change community character. So shrinking minimum lot sizes in targeted areas, that can help Ryan zero in on things like future land use maps and changes to zoning ordinances. So that's sort of the way we were thinking about that. You can
just can I just ask a quick question? You mentioned that it would be the local city of Ishpeming and all that using it, but if it's to encourage developers, they're not going to be coming from Ishpeming.
Yeah.
If they want to encourage it, I'm just thinking of the city of Jackson presentation we had recently where they're like, we just opened it up and made it easy. So for a parcel like a church, a local person may know that it's a church, but how would someone looking at this, and is this publicly available?
Yeah.
Or is it just for the city of Ishpeming in that manner to look at?
Yeah, absolutely. So we did add these community amenity layers so that they could be layered. So you could look at like, oh, but wait, that's a park, that's a church, for that reason. And it would in theory be publicly available because this dashboard will be published as like a publicly available website. And that is kind of the goal of it, is that it's not really meant to be used just on its own for that reason, but that it can help the city and their partners in development, or their partners in planning and consulting kind of identify ideal sites. And these aren't just for ruling out different properties. We also put these in because you can see like for things that need more walkability. So we have these maps based on each of the different housing types. If you're trying to develop lofts, you want sites that are the most walkable to the things that people need to walk to, whether that's schools for folks with families or like healthcare facilities or grocery stores or gyms or parks. We wanted to layer in those kinds of things. And that's why areas like this, I mean, making this like mixed use developments would have a lot of benefits, have access to a lot of different of those high desirable walkability towards sort of things. And that got really off topic of your question.
No, you're
okay.
the other question I had is you said
I have a question.
And my question was what is the process or plan for regular updates?
Yeah, I guess that kind of depends. So with Ishpeming, they're gonna be using this for a master plan update imminently. Um, and so with Marquette, the tax assessor data, we had to purchase. Other counties, there's different rules with that. So like, I can't remember, Ryan, exactly what counties it is. We do some of that data maintenance for them. So we have access on a rolling basis to that data. So some of that can be, you know, part of like, say, a contract if CUPPAD were to update and maintain that. With somewhere where we'd have to purchase the data annually, that might be like a renewed contract periodically every few years or something. We haven't gotten into that since this is still not even fully rolled out yet. We're still tweaking some things. So in terms of long-term what it'll be, it's a good question. But I think it'll probably be more of like a community dependent decision in terms of like need and availability of data.
And we have a question from Joe Teal here,
Yeah.
online. Joe, if you
Hi,
can, yep,
can you hear me okay? Yep. My question, I have actually multiple questions. First question is, I guess maybe I missed it. What platform was this built on?
ArcGIS Pro.
And that is a software that you guys purchase?
Yeah, yep. CUPPAD has ArcGIS Pro. That's one of our like big offerings is the regional development.
Yep.
We do a lot of
Okay.
mapping communities, but you can also get like ArcGIS online for much cheaper without having to get software. You can just, you know, do a login.
That's cool. I get all that. Now, the question is, do they allow for open API? Do you guys have access to that?
That's probably a better Ryan question. I'm not sure.
I think so.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm not
Yep.
too
So
familiar with the software, but yes, I think.
okay. Now, the other question is that when you say capture information and you're capturing this tax data, you're downloading that from a tax assessment database. So they give you access to that. You buy the data, they give you access to the database. Is that something that you can do on a, on a contract basis as recurring? I can't imagine that there isn't an opportunity to put an AI layer into that to just capture that data constantly and update regularly. Is that something that when you guys say capture the data, are you physically grabbing data and scraping data from databases from cities?
Yeah, we're not really doing like scraping. So this was we got this spreadsheet and then the associated shapefile from Marquette County, where we had to purchase that as like a one-time 2024 snapshot. But we could, in theory, just rerun the code, like say on a yearly basis or bi-yearly if Ishpeming didn't want to do, you know, $500 every year, and just rerun the code since the system's pretty much built. It's sort of just refreshing and changing out the data.
Yep. Okay. So, okay, that answers that. Thank you. And then the last question that I have is, if it's an open API, if you guys can find out, you could take actually, again, scrape data from internet data based on the business, because you have the address location. You could just grab internet data on what the actual, who the owner is and potentially what the use of the property is based on what their presence is in a, just general internet. And that might be a really good ability to solve that. And then my last question is this searchable based on criteria? Is there a search engine associated with this?
Not on this. In the actual ArcGIS Pro map file, there is. You can query things, you can search by attributes. That is a much bigger, more technical file than we would share with our folks at the city, just because they aren't GIS professionals and we don't want them to accidentally, you know, get more confused than they are figuring things out, trying to figure out new software.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Great work. This is really, really cool. Really cool.
Oh, thank you. I think that's all I'm going to talk at you guys about unless you have questions. Yeah.
And the community amenities, how did you identify those?
So Like in terms of picking out the kinds or in terms of like
Looking at the
creating?
kinds.
So, most of them are the kinds that were either like discussed in our contract explicitly, like parks, grocery stores, healthcare facilities. Others I included because I know senior housing is a big topic of conversation and because I know churches are not going to show up in the tax issue. So things like churches I wanted to include because I thought it would include a sort of multi-layer of functionality, both excluding them from low taxed properties when you're looking at redevelopment opportunities, but also, you know, if you're talking about wanting to build housing for seniors, you might want to consider its proximity to amenities like churches. Things like gyms, I included because, you know, parks, gyms, things like that, if you're trying to attract younger people for your downtown lofts, those are typically pretty popular for people to look at being nearby. There wasn't really a process aside from me being like, what are the things I'd want to live near if I was, you know.
So that was a manual identification process. This
Yep.
is a school, this is a pharmacy.
Some of these were data sets that CUPPAD already had in-house.
Okay.
So churches, schools, the library, healthcare facilities, those were already things that our data and like our big GIS guy, Mike, already maintains those databases. So those were easy. Grocery stores, pharmacies, and gyms I created. Those are pretty simple to make by just creating like a spreadsheet, making it a CSV and then geocoding them. So that's how those were added in.
Thanks.
And in the beginning, when you had, was that just a wish list? I mean, it seemed pretty extensive, I guess, you know what I mean? It was like, you know, a year, or did that also include, did you also include redevelopment of, you know, older
Yeah.
homes, older sites, things like that? I mean,
Absolutely.
additionally, like a lot of other towns, there's a lot of
Yeah.
things that can be either repurposed probably or.
We have a separate map for that. So this is just, I'll take off the amenities so you can actually see these.
So that would have been included in that list in the beginning.
Nope, this was separate. This
They
was
just,
something.
that is just what, a wish list of what they would, if we given all the money in the world, this is what we would want, is that the kind of thing?
So the new development stuff came from a target market analysis they had done that CUPPAD didn't do for them. They had a sort of a target market analysis, just sort of ran what the gaps in their housing supply were and what they need over X amount of years.
How many years was that? Because I mean, it was like, I mean, I'm just trying to,
Yeah.
a little realistic, you know, when I'm thinking about,
Oh, it's a lot.
That was a lot.
Yeah,
you
it's a
know,
lot.
it's like 8 apartment complexes a
Mhm.
year and whatever it was.
Yeah. No,
How
it's a
many
lot.
townhouses a year and how many duplexes a year. So I'm just trying to figure, that is just something like kind of pie in the sky and
Mhm.
it's hopefully to kind of work towards it kind of thing. But,
Yeah,
you
so
know,
that was from their target market analysis, and I will say it makes it feel a little less crazy when I point out those weren't complexes for like the apartments, those were units. So it doesn't need to be like 8 apartment buildings, it's like 8 lots, or if you put in one building with 4, that's.
but if you add it all together,
Oh, yeah,
it
it's
equals like
tons.
50.
It's a ton, that's why they
Units.
wanted help, like,
Yeah.
how can we come close to reaching?
Exactly.
Yep,
So Christopher, is there anything you'd like to add about the TMA?
I was just dropping some of the data in the chat. So the TMA was a countywide effort coordinated by the Marquette County Land Bank Authority, LSCP, the Community Foundation, and 8 other local units of government. That was done about a year ago or so. Calls for 980 new builds annually across the whole county and 1,445 rehabilitated units, but we know those are very high. Like that's what'll theoretically maximize the market. Those are not the numbers we're likely to hit. Ishpeming has a specific subset of that data that's in there, and everyone can see it. It's totally public data that people can find at housingnow906.org. So,
Thank you for that.
yeah, it's a really cool, I encourage you guys to read it. Target market analysis are cool. I don't know how they do it.
Well,
it's magic. Yeah.
Like the Asher, the consultant that did the TMA, wow, like that's a lot of units. They really assume growth. They assume that you want to grow, you're going to grow. It's not like today you have that many people waiting to, do you know what I mean? Like it's a very growth oriented mindset when they put that together. But yeah, they're big numbers.
Yeah, and I would add is that Ishpeming Township, it's neighboring township next door. You know, you break down that data, it's not overwhelming. It's about 14 new for sale homes. It's about almost 20 rentals that they need. You know, you start doing that across the county, yeah, it's gonna be 980 plus. So the city of Marquette takes the lion's share of that, but yeah, I think at the same time, like, this is why I think it's important to educate the local councils and officials and planners that we need to start breaking down that data into the community specific details, because Ishpeming, and I reside there, we could certainly use a lot more quality rental apartments for sure, especially in the downtown corridor that's seeing a lot of disinvestment, trying to get that going through the DDA. So it all kind of ties together. So I do want to just kind of focus maybe to Chris's point too, and I've seen him report on this. That number is huge, but it's also aspirational. You know, it's not like we're going to hit that number. We may hit half of that, and I think we call that a solid win for our county. But it's really up to each local community to start thinking about it that way. We're right, the growth mindset, and Sharon's always available for specific questions too.
And I think to follow up on your point there, one thing that we wanted to be conscious of with putting this together was also tying it with current like development and zoning restrictions that are making those numbers seem even higher. Because the parcels are there. Like if you look at like development ready parcels or vacant parcels in Ishpeming, there's enough to hit those targets. The issue is things like reduced lot sizes from when things are parsed out. Munising has a lot of similar issues, you know, that when the city was platted out, there was a different minimum lot size requirement. And so now there's lots that have to stay empty because you can't redevelop them. So things like changing lot size ordinances, changing where you can put residential, expanding mixed use residential or multiple residential in areas that have historically been kept just general commercial can open up a lot of housing opportunities that weren't there before. That can make that really large number seem a lot more digestible in a 5-year time span.
And again, did you say that included redevelopment of existing properties?
My understanding, and I didn't do the TMA, my understanding was that these were new builds, but I could be wrong. We included a redevelopment layer.
That was just two different numbers in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the other, I guess the other, because I know there's a lot of communities thinking about doing TMAs or housing studies, the other value in that, even though the aggregate numbers are kind of scary, and seem like big numbers, the real value to me, I think, is in the types of housing that's missing, right? And the price points that they need to be at, and helping those communities focus on, hey, there's like this whole demographic that likes townhouse style living and we have none in our community, right? So it's a little bit of that too, if you came to pass the huge numbers.
Now, I was just thinking about these, some of the
Oh, I had
communities,
it
and I'm
on.
not
But I
picking out
didn't-
these numbers,
Because I can't go
but
back.
some
to the
of them
slide,
really
so it's
need
good to see that.
redevelopment of their current,
Oh, yeah.
some of the home, a lot of the homes and a lot of the commercial thing, you know? That it would be nice if a lot of that stuff got fixed up and people could live there.
Yeah.
You know, instead of just all new.
Yeah.
I mean, I just what I was thinking.
Does part of that study, I'm sorry if I missed it, does part of that study, like survey the community on what kind of housing they want? Like you're talking about, you know, folks who might like living in townhouses, but our community doesn't have any. How do you have that data?
So CUPPAD didn't do the TMA, but I think folks who did are on the call and they might want to answer that question.
Yeah.
Because, so I hate to turf a question to me off to someone else, but. Do you
Yeah.
want to try to answer?
I don't represent
Kristen?
Land Use USA, but what I've gathered is that they did it in lifestyle clusters. So they collect data from 3 different sources: American Community Survey, Experian. So when you kind of use your credit cards and things like that, they have other data that they use to the census as well, which is part of ACS. And then they come up with a demographic section that's laid out in the plan of lifestyle clusters, true American grit, dependent technology folks, like retired community, and then they hone in on each of those communities. And then from there, they decide, I don't know the metrics or how, but then they decide what type of housing unit can be built. And they actually laid it out for us pretty nicely, where there's a slide in there, I don't know if you showed it earlier, but the supply and demand, there are some types of housing units that are needed right now in our county that are just not being built. And that's probably to Chris's point, Christopher Germain has outlined this in the past.
Just to go back to that
We're
slide.
looking at townhouses, we're looking at cottage courts, we're looking at, you know, a little bit more of that dense, gentle density. We're just not seeing that until, you know, now. And it's tough, also there's 3 layers that you can look at on a graph. You're gonna have your high market rate units that are above $400,000. You're gonna have your missing middle, you have your lower income. So all these clusters, that's how they kind of have this pain threshold, for lack of a better word, of how much rent they're willing to pay, or how much they're willing to pay for a new condo or a new townhouse, or just a single family home. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Christopher can jump in too, because I do remember when we were going through the TMA process with Sharon, the consultant, we said, okay, we know you're gonna look at this national stuff, but we're kind of different in the UP. Like, we didn't want everything she did to be based on these national trends that maybe aren't applicable to, because, yeah, I mean, you all know, we're a little different. And so we gave her like a list of people and places like to talk to, and I don't remember who else, like the university, we wanted her to talk to somebody at NMU to like speak directly to what their housing needs were and what they're seeing on the ground. And I can't, if maybe Christopher remembers the list of people that we encourage. I think there were some large employers that we suggested she talk to, just to get kind of that local flavor and make sure it wasn't just, hey, let's look at a national study and say that these lifestyle clusters want to locate in Ishpeming, because that may not be true, right? So there was an attempt to get that localized.
And the document goes into all, it's really cool. Like, I encourage you to read it. I was like, I don't want to speak to it because I wasn't part of it, but reading through it, it's impressive. So I highly recommend if you need some late night reading.
Okay, Christopher's on his way here now.
Oh,
So
So a different question regarding the data.
Yeah.
Is this tool proprietary to CUPPAD, or can I take the data that I have for our township and develop the same mapping using this tool?
Well, I answered incorrectly in Ishpeming last week, so I'm gonna let Ryan answer.
we're gonna take a couple weeks to think about that. We see a lot of potential for scalability with it and working with communities in the future, and it might be a program that we can offer to various communities, or so we're gonna think on that a little bit.
But I will say, I think, you know, Ishpeming had this TMA data for them, but like communities that didn't, or maybe you're not thinking about housing. The first time we presented this at a CUPPAD quarterly meeting, you know, folks were asking like, what if someone wanted to do this for like commercial applications? Like, the data for commercial is there with the tax assessors, like the parcel data can do that too. So there's a lot of different ways that you can play with like a dashboard like this. And depending on if you don't have a TMA, if there's other things you're trying to hit or other goals you're trying to like identify that can maybe be parsed out through that more generalized data. I think there's a lot of ways it can be translated into anywhere that has tax data. This could probably be realistically replicated.
Well, the reason for asking the question, many of us have the PSNA assessing programs in our jurisdictions. Data is already there.
Yeah.
In our particular case, we already have ArcGIS Pro in-house.
Yeah.
We can see the value of the tool. That's why I was asking, is this proprietary, or can we share info on how you got to X, Y, and Z? Because I saw that the code from the standpoint of, oh, yeah, that's easy enough to put in. But it's a question of, is that shareable?
Well, that actually isn't what the code looks like.
I know.
Okay, I was gonna say, Python is scarier looking and I made it look nicer for the, for the slides. No one wants to look at a slide full of Python, I promise. Even data nerds don't want to do that, but you know.
But I think the real question is the mathematical formula.
Oh, I don't own it.
Is it something that you can just say, here's the mathematical formula of how we got there? Not share the Python code, but say,
Well,
we took layer A and layer B and multiplied it by this, and then that's the answer. And in that case, it becomes almost public domain, which it has been for 45, 50 years.
yeah, I mean, I certainly said I would to Ishpeming, and then I was told I shouldn't maybe say that so quickly. So. I'm just joking, but yeah, I mean,
and I understand with Ishpeming, they had the $50,000 grant to do it.
Yeah.
But in my mind, and I went to school for this back in the 80s and 90s, so it's been done 100,000 times across the country, and they just share how they did how they created a layer and how they layered the layers together, and everyone does it a little differently, but it's the same principles. So
yeah,
I think to answer your question, sir, it should be like, okay, identify all the properties and identify these tax parcel data and add them together, or determine the criteria for lot size and then that. So it should be able to fit together.
Yeah.
Seamlessly, but CUPPAD has already done it, so they may be able to assist you through their services and make it easier for you versus you having to do it 100%. You may only have to do 25%.
Right. It's how much thinking you want to put into methodology. I mean,
Thank you for that.
Thanks.
No,
So I came in late, so I didn't see, but when you click on it, does it have the street view photo?
no, it doesn't. But that is something that was asked about. I think adding that, I'm not sure how to do that without it becoming a whole gigantic list, but I'm sure there is a way.
That would be really
So
cool.
that's an asterisk of like, yeah, probably.
Yeah.
I mean, in theory, you could make the base layer satellite data, right? So you could just click it and that be what you look at.
Yeah.
But
Do you ever use Builder?
no.
I think that's maybe something I've not either, but I've seen it used for things like that before. So
Okay. I'll have to look into this.
lots of toys.
Yes.
All right, are there any other questions?
are there any in the chat?
I see none.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm thinking about our work groups for RHP. They kind of faded away over time, and I think they didn't really work well for a number of reasons. So how our work groups were originally structured, we had a housing ecosystem work group, a housing development work group, housing stock work group. So there were two housing development work groups that we just changed the name of one of them, and a rent burden work group. And in theory, they were all supposed to meet up and work through the goals and strategies of our action plan. It didn't really work out that way, and so they all kind of faded away. But so the troubles with them were a number of problems. Our counties are really large and communities are spread out, so in-person participation was a challenge. Each county is at a different capacity level and faces its own distinct housing challenges. Marquette County tends to be overrepresented among our stakeholders and examples. That's just because, you know, we have more stakeholders here and a lot more examples here. Goal-based groups lack clear ownership at the local level, reducing accountability for progress. And the action plan's regional goals can feel too abstract for communities without local context. So I'm suggesting we reinvigorate these working groups or restructure them into county-based working groups and have all of the action plan goals structured underneath each of the counties. And I think it can work with existing groups. For example, the Dickinson County Infrastructure and Housing Alliance, Schoolcraft Resiliency Board, and we take some of the RHP funds and give them to each of these groups to have an agenda item within their existing agenda items to work through this. So my arguments in favor of this are it ensures each county's unique housing challenges and priorities are addressed directly. It gives smaller counties equal voice by shifting discussions to local forums before regional sharing. It builds stronger local ownership and accountability for action plan implementation. It increases the relevance of meetings by focusing on county-specific issues and solutions. It allows counties to set realistic, locally tailored strategies aligned with regional goals. It improves engagement by making it easier for participants to connect with familiar local partners, and encourages cross-county learning through structured regional updates and best practice sharing. So some potential challenges we might encounter are uneven participation. Some counties may struggle to maintain active working groups unless incorporated into existing groups, which then might impact their attention to traditional focus areas and time challenges within their meetings. Capacity gaps. Smaller counties with limited staff or resources may need extra support to keep pace. Inconsistent follow-through without strong facilitation. Progress tracking across counties may vary. Coordination workload. CUPPAD would need to invest more time into managing 6 separate groups. And risk of siloing. Counties might focus inward and miss opportunities for regional collaboration. And alignment drift. Local priorities could diverge from the local action plan without regular regional check-ins. So knowing what some of these challenges are and talking about them at the RHP, I think we could avoid some of these. So I want to put it to you guys. What do you think about this potential new structure, and do you think it would work better than what we had planned before? I see some head nodding.
I'd be in favor.
Yeah.
Same with me.
Good.
I like it.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess what bodies do you see these fitting into? I mentioned 2 of them already. I think those are good choices for those counties, but thinking Menominee County and Marquette County, we have multiple groups in Marquette County. The the Marquette County Housing Coalition and Housing 906 and I'm not sure if there's a housing specific group in Alger County. But could this funding potentially start one?
I would think so. The problem, you know, always is in these smaller communities like our counties is, you know, getting enough representation. You know what I'm saying? But then again, you know, but like you were saying, a lot of our stuff is like shared stuff, Marquette Alger. You know, this is the name of it, you know, whatever, the organization, Marquette Alger or Marquette Alger School Rep, you know, that's right. So it's a shared thing anyway, I think it's not usually just one, you know, with whatever area you happen to be working with, and just Alger, just Ontonagon. So be good to work with, you know, maybe not. So, you know.
Yeah.
What do you envision they would use the funding for exactly?
For whatever they wanted to use it for, if they wanted to use it for lunch and inviting stakeholders, any extra, you know, work that they have to put in for arranging for those meetings. I think labor for filling out a simple report by monthly. I think all of those things could qualify.
What kind of funding is it? How much? No?
I don't know yet.
That's what I want. $50? $5,000. Well, the work's gonna fall on one person. Exactly. Which, I mean, I'm learning very quickly. They all have a lot of things on their plates. So, I don't know. I think that's kind of where I was going too, you know, I mean, a lot of us have got multiple roles, many roles in our counties or communities. So it's tough to throw another, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you want to be successful, right? You want to go well. Just be, oh, wow, that's just one more thing. Try to have a meeting.
So, yeah, to the point of overloading people, and I don't wanna say overload that way, but for all of those subcommittees or subgroups, is there going to be someone from CUPPAD participating in each of those as well to help keep the regional plan in line? And that, because it may be that some of those funds, instead of being pushed down to one of the groups, being used by CUPPAD for the individual group to maybe alleviate some of that extra burden of it all falling on one person.
Yeah.
So the logistics may stay at the regional level, but you then have the county level organization meetings in that manner. So that's just a thought. I'm not. We cover 10 out of the 15 counties in the UP, so I end up going to a lot of these.
Yeah, that was my original thought, was that yeah, we would definitely be providing support for each of these counties if this was the direction we wanted to go in. So we would designate a county lead, and then we would serve as the regional coordinator. We would still be doing these quarterly full RHP meetings, but we would be going around to each of those 6 meetings. And then some other tools that we would be promoting with this would be standardized progress report template. That would be the idea that would be bi-monthly reporting. I previously shared a new housing project form and the housing tracker that was based on Antonio's housing tracker for Marquette County. I think that works really well. and I have those in Google Forms and Google Sheets. So you fill out the form and it directly pipes into the Google Sheet, and we can all view it together. We'd still have the quarterly RHP meetings. And then we'd have quarterly progress report summaries and spotlight county best practices at the full RHP meetings. And then our long-term goal would be using this parcel inventory and analysis tool and integrating it with our work here. So, any other questions? Okay. And the last item I wanted to share was MSHDA had put out a new resource recently. It's I think a 6 or 7 page guide called the Get Housing Ready Guide. Its purpose is to provide a menu of proven strategies to make communities more attractive to housing developers. It's flexible and tailored to your local needs. It has 6 focus areas, which are property inventory and transparency, policy and zoning reform, financial tools, development realities, and streamlined approvals and utilities. It also includes a call to action that asks you to identify 2 to 3 ideas to adopt locally, and uses checklists to assess development readiness. So if you haven't had a chance to check this tool out yet, I highly recommend it. It's something you can share with your boards and commissions. It's very short and concise, so I think it's very readable. And then finally, I wanted to share a few grant opportunities, trainings, and other events. So the MSHDA My Neighborhood program is opening October 1st. So get your development projects ready and check out the application ahead of that, because the funding is going to go fast, just as it has for other rounds. The rural readiness, I don't know if anybody on the call submitted a letter of interest for the rural readiness program, but they say that invitations to apply have gone out this week for those who submitted letters of interest. For training opportunities, the rural real estate boot camp is still accepting registrations. That's the week of September 15th, and it's here in Marquette. MSU Extension is having a online webinar for best practices in emergency response and hazard communication. That's September 18th. Eagle is having a what leaders should know about drinking water, and that's August 28th online. Then for events, the MML convention, the Michigan Association of Planning Conference, the Michigan Land Bank Association's 2025 Leadership Summit, and MEDA's, I think they changed the name of this, Michigan's Premier Economic Summit and annual meeting are all coming up this fall, so it's conference season. And in other news, there's a couple of land division bills in the House right now. It passed both the House and Senate. And I think the last movement was in May. So those seem likely to pass, but they would allow for more splitting of property. So it's all.
And then Ryan, if you could put on your calendar at some point, EDA, Upper Peninsula Economic Development Alliance is having a in-person event in Marquette on October 17th, which is Friday, at the Holiday Inn.
Okay, I'll sure add that.
So
I'll get it added to this.
EDA.org and also the Michigan Works will be sending out invites for that. The topic will be, so it's not housing, but healthcare across the UP. There's a lot of issues, you know, rural healthcare, things like that, and also the bigger issues out there. How to take care of the people we got here.
Yep. It's important.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll be
How to
sure.
keep them living here too.
Yep.
And not moving away because of healthcare, so.
Well, I'll be sure to get that added to the presentation before I send it out. And are there any other news anyone wants to share? Check the. Anyone online want to share anything? All right. Well, if not, I think we still got a half hour here until Amy is gonna be here. So I guess if nobody has any.
There are some folks in that lobby, but
Oh,
I don't,
there are.
I don't know if Amy's there. I saw her. Is she? Oh my God. There's a lot of you.
Yeah, and we got a
Am
sizable.
I on first?
We've got a sizable online audience too. We're
Okay.
live right now, actually. So.
Hello. Sorry, we're pushing the time. We're out visiting all the different housing projects that are going up in the area. And it's been a fun morning. We've seen everything from duplexes to new construction, missing middle housing, to new construction, affordable housing using the low-income housing tax credits. It's been really great. You guys have a lot going on. In fact, you know, you hear some of the folks are a little bit slower at construction because there's such high demand for the trades here, and why that's a little bit stressful if you're the one building or rehabilitating the housing. It's also a sign of the fact that you got a lot going on all at one time, and that's a good thing. When I was looking at some of the data for this area, you know, the UP in general is about 5,000 units short of housing for the current population. The region that we're sitting in right now is about 2,000 of that 5,000. So, and that's just assuming you have no growth, which we know, looking at the data, that the UP is growing, right? And so there's lots of housing that needs to be developed, and it's not easy to do because our markets aren't working right now, right? What it costs to construct a housing unit, whether it's a single family home or a multifamily unit, is really more than the average family can afford to pay in either a mortgage payment or rent. And the gap isn't small. The gap, you know, is about $150,000 to $200,000 difference, which is a lot. So we think about the amount of funding that we're trying to bring to help fill that gap. You know, it's incremental in the progress we're making, but we are certainly seeing progress. 2 years ago, when I was up here, I would say as a state as a whole, we would have been about 190,000 units short of where we need to be. And today, we're 119,000. That's a lot of new housing units that are being built in our state in a very short amount of time. And that's because we're all working really hard, right? Everybody cares about making sure that everyone has a place to go at the end of the day. People are working hard at developing resources. I know we are at the state, but also at the local government and community levels. We're seeing additional people, new emerging developers coming out to kind of get in the game and help develop and rehabilitate housing units. In fact, this morning we met with a developer, and Antonio, correct me if I'm wrong, but they've done about 200 single family home rehabs. Is that right?
They manage a portfolio of over 200.
Yeah, and coming in and purchasing and rehabbing and renting to families at an affordable level, right? That's a lot. So it's really appreciative to see everybody working together. We're liking that local governments are willing to look at pilots and looking at the housing TIF program. In fact, we were at a development that used our missing middle. That was really targeting families between 80 and 120% of AMI, who, despite the fact that they make more than the average, still can't afford the housing, because you guys have increased so much in your cost of rental housing up here over the last couple of years. But they were able to use our missing middle funding, as well as one of our other new tools, the housing TIF, which provides some additional funding through tax capture to help kind of bridge that gap. So you guys are doing it right. I'm happy you really, your regional housing partnership is working together. I'm impressed that you got this amount of turnout. So good job on that as well. And I want you mostly to know that we're here to support your work. We have that statewide housing plan that hopefully you guys are familiar with. You created your regional plan as a subset of that plan. We've brought money to the table to help implement that plan. Believe it or not, we're going to start early next year at updating the plan, because we're already that far through. So next year, you're going to see us come up and ask for you to pull groups together, where we'll have consultants in, really getting as much feedback as we can from all of you on what updated needs may be, and how we can help reduce barriers to access funding, or help to provide additional resources, whether that's helping folks update their zoning to allow for more dense housing, whether that's bringing gap financing, whether that's bringing capacity as far as things that like Build UP is doing, and providing consultation and working with local governments to access our program. So be looking for that. We'll also have likely an online survey, so that you can get it out to folks that maybe aren't always in the housing realm and coming out to meetings like this, but really have something important to say. We want to capture all of those thoughts as we begin to work on the next housing plan. I want to talk about the fact that we really have been focusing on trying to get additional resources. So in 2022, MSHDA put out about $700 million worth of funding for housing in the state. So, which was great. $700 million is a lot of funding. In 2024, we put out over $2 billion worth of funding for housing. So on our end, we've been working really hard at finding additional resources, working more closely with the state legislators to have them invest, trying to take that funding and leverage it either from private sector, from philanthropy, or from federal government entities to make it easier to get housing developed. We couldn't put that money out if there weren't people who were coming to the table and accessing the dollars. So I wanted to say thank you again for all that you guys are doing to help develop housing in this area. I want to make sure you know about a new program that we have that was actually inspired by some of the listening tours a couple of years ago in the UP, and that is our employer assisted housing program. So while we were out meeting with folks, we met with a lot of employers, private sector employers, and also public sector employers, who said it was really hard to find employees because of the amount or expense of housing up here, or the lack of housing near their place of employment. So we created last year an employer assisted housing guide, which was kind of like a toolbox of how employers can get involved in the creation of housing, whether that's them owning the homes or housing units and renting to their staff, providing down payment assistance, rental assistance, or just even getting involved in providing equity or loans to housing across the state. This last year, we decided to put a little money to it. So we created an employer assisted housing fund, which matches employers' investments dollar for dollar. And so it's a way to get additional funding into housing, very flexible, can be used for about anything as long as the employer is providing that match. Those actually can go up to $2 million matches from the state. So we started out with about $10 million just a few months ago. I think we've got a couple million left. We're hoping to put an additional $25 million into that fund starting in October, assuming that the state budget gets passed and that the state allocates that money for that program. We really have been seeing employers of all sizes step up. Sometimes it's a really small employer who just wants to help build a quadplex for their employees. Some it's a really large employer like a hospital who would like to provide a down payment assistance as an employee benefit to help attract nurses to their hospitals. So really trying to meet the community's needs where they are. And that's really why we do these tours across the state, is not only to see the housing that we've invested in to make sure it's high quality and an asset to the community, but really to listen and talk about what are the barriers, what are the needs, what are your values and priorities as a community so that the state can be responsive to that. And that's what I'd love to spend the majority of the time this morning, still 15 minutes left, is rather than me just yap about what the state is doing, really hear from you on how you think things are happening in this region. We know we've invested a lot of money in Region B. You have the highest capacity of the 3 regions in the UP is right here. And so you're accessing a lot of funding for housing choice vouchers, which is rental assistance, for homeless services, for our single family mortgage, which comes with a $10,000 down payment assistance, and also for our missing middle and my neighborhood funding programs as well, that kind of meets those different levels of housing projects. So I'd love it if you're okay with it, just to open it up and hear from you guys. So any questions or thoughts or things that we should know? Anyone? Antonio.
I'm not super familiar with these programs, so maybe we have utility partners in the room, but energy efficiency in new construction, is there anything out there that we could be utilizing more up here?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you would have asked me this 9 months ago, I would have had a totally different answer than I have today. But there are funds available. Some of them are caught up in the court systems right now. At MSHDA, we are anticipating being able to release a NOFA for $35 million of green energy funds that would be in partnership with our low-income housing tax credit, so for multifamily development. But there are other funding at our state's green bank called MySaves. They have funding for smaller developments. They have funding for single-family homes that are just wanting to upgrade their energy efficiency. So there's some rebate programs out there. There's some tax credit programs out there. Eagle had a Solar for All program that was rolling out for both multifamily as well as for single-family homes, really promoting community solar in neighborhoods as well as at our multifamily. So I am not 100% up to date on how where those are in the court systems. Some of the rebate programs and tax credit programs we know will be ending at the end of this year, likely, because the new federal administration is choosing not to continue those. But some of the other programs that were funded out of the Infrastructure Act, I would guess will be released in the next couple of months, and we'll see an influx of those fundings to be used. So really taking the time to connect from a regional housing partnership folks to what those resources look like would be on my priority list.
Amy, Andrew McNeely from our Peninsula Power Company. So just to follow up on Antonio's program, I oversee UPCO's energy efficiency and electrification program. So, and we cover 10 of the 15 counties. So we're in both regions A and B. One of the pieces I'm looking for is ways to partner our programs, which are ratepayer funded, so they're not contingent on any of the federal programs or even state programs, but being able to partner with the state programs. We've worked with Eagle on the Michigan Home Energy Rebate Program since September. So, and we do that. So are there specific MSHDA programs that there's an opportunity for us to partner with? Because on the affordable housing side, I worked through with Antonio last year, the ability for us to use our new home construction program and rebates to be applied to the building process of affordable homes with certain documentation. So that's where part of where his question may have come from. But I just wanted to ask, specific to MSHDA, are there ways that utilities can partner with the programs that you already have?
Absolutely. I think, and we do have some partnerships with other utility companies in the LPs, which I heard you all call the Lower Peninsula. Feels a little derogatory, but I'm gonna let it go. And really trying to help provide kind of that connection with our multifamily developments with energy programs at our utility companies. And we can do that in a few different ways. One, we are always willing to use our database to communicate your programs to our developers. So anytime you want to partner with us, if you have any kind of advertising you want to do about that, we're willing to do that. We also can connect you with the Michigan Housing Council, who is like the trade association for our larger developers, if you're not already connected with them, so that you can advertise your programs through them at the same time. We also love to get feedback from the utility companies as we are creating our qualified allocation plan, which is how we distribute our low-income housing tax credits in the state, and really looking at what those energy standards should look like, how many additional points do we get for those, and getting a lot of your knowledge on that is really helpful. Now for the single family programs or like the smaller project program, we can do the same thing through our My Neighborhood and our regional housing partnerships across the state. Those are the entities that we use to do the majority of our communicating. So you're here, which is a good sign, and you're working with a lot of your folks. That's how we work with the other utility companies as well on our smaller projects.
I know I've worked with Megan.
Oh yeah, see, you're doing it. And Megan is our go-to for energy efficiency.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Alex with Cam. I run a home repair program. I am really excited about the My Neighborhood funding that we're going to be getting soon. One of the challenges we run into is the lead abatement and remediation issues, and I think that's probably a lot of people in the room. I'm just wondering if there's additional funding anywhere for those activities so that we can save the grant that we have for the rehab that actually needs to be done.
Yeah, so there's some lead funding at the Department of Health and Human Services, but of course I think you have to have kids, right? And so that makes it a little bit difficult if you're not doing are you doing homeowner rehab or?
Yeah.
Oh, yep. So you do access that then if there's children in the home?
We haven't
With
done any
rentals?
yet. We're looking
Okay.
to in the future. We kind of just avoided anything that would have required that in
Oh.
the first program, but we're looking to expand.
So for a homeowner rehab, if there's children in the household, definitely work with DHHS to try to access their funding. To my knowledge, and Tanya, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, they've never run out of lead money because it's hard to get out the doors because there's not as many people who do lead abatement, and it's so restrictive on the type of housing it can be used for. So if you know there's children in the homes, definitely try to access that. Other than that, I don't know of any other set-asides for lead remediation specifically. Anyone else on my team know of anything else that I might not know of? No. I do want to say, you know, it's been a little bit stressful with an administration turn, right? Because we just haven't really known what our funding is going to look like. And things are changing so rapidly and have been a little bit uncertain. But it has been a time for removing barriers and becoming more efficient. So we're really focused on that. And there is some federal legislation out there right now that is going to make changes to our federal programs, which is like our CDBG funds that I'm sure many of you are accessing. And if not, I hope you all are accessing in the future, as well as our home funds that will remove some of those barriers and make it easier to use. We're being pretty aggressive about communicating those changes that we'd like to see to remove the cost to using our funds, have it make more sense to use our funds as far as environmental work that might have to be done, certainly trying to reduce having to use prevailing wage or Davis-Bacon on our projects, especially the smaller projects. Really looking at I'm trying to think of some of the other changes off the top of my head. And of course, because I'm in front of everyone, they're failing me, but really looking at how are we going to make these programs easier, and we're seeing success. So there has been some legislation that has been introduced, and it has passed. I believe it was out of the Senate, if I remember correctly, and it was unanimously approved around housing. Which, you know, we're all like got these bipartisan fights going on, right? But around housing, we're really starting to see everybody working together. So I think we're going to see some good things going on. And I'm feeling some relief in both the Senate and the House budgets. We're seeing that the majority of our programs are staying stable. Which is a lot better than what we thought when we saw the president's budget come out and they wiped out all housing dollars. So I think we're going to be okay, and I think we can actually come out of this period in a better way than we were when we started, because we do know that the government tends to put a lot of regulations in place that are for a good reason, but really don't apply equally to everyone. They shouldn't, right? Based on size of projects. And so I think we're going to see some good relief going there. And I hope that not only does it bring down the cost, but it brings more people to the table. Because we know there's folks who are hesitant against using government money because of all the compliance issues and extra hoops that goes along with that. So I think there's some good things happening.
That's good to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm encouraged. Anything else? Oh, good, go.
I have a kind of an off-the-wall question on Ridgeock Township. This is related to short-term rentals.
Mm-hmm.
From the standpoint of the calls that I've been receiving from people from outside the area, their primary goal in purchase is to either take the vacant land and build a house on it and rent it as a short-term rental, Airbnb kind of concept. Are we seeing a trend declining across the state or increasing across the state in that regard? Because my concern is we're giving up valuable housing space for people to basically use for tourists.
Yeah, that's my concern too. We have seen an increase during COVID, especially in our state, of folks buying second homes, either whether their primary home is in Michigan or out in another state, as well as an increase of short-term rentals, mostly because economically, landlord makes a lot more money off a short-term rental than they do permanent rental. So there has been, so yes, that's a trend. Over the last, I think at least we're on the third year of the state really grappling with any kind of policy around the short-term rental market, whether that's allowing for locals to control that with your own policies, and then also maybe putting some additional fees onto folks who are doing short-term rentals that can be captured mostly by the local municipalities, so they can use that to meet the amenities that are necessary, but also kind of counterbalance taking that housing unit off for a permanent resident, right? So I personally really think it should be a local control issue, and that each community should be able to look at what their needs are and determine the maximum amount of short-term rentals that they want to allow in their communities.
Victoria with School County, and I just wanted to see with my neighborhoods, have two questions on that. One, do you see much that there'll be any changes to that program in October as what we saw last year? And then secondly, a lot of our developers are small and working developers, and they're eager to see the application, be able to like start filling it out. Could they look at a previous one or whatever and be able to start answering the questions so they're ready in October to move forward?
Tanya, she directs that program, so I'm going to let her answer that.
Sure. So my neighbor 3.0 is being drafted. We place it out on our website in September, and then it will be available October 1st. If they're looking for what the application is going to look like, there's application instructions posted on the My Neighborhood website, and you can go out there and you can look at them. We're not expecting significant changes in the application, to make a few minor tweaks to the program itself.
So yeah, they can get started, just don't put it in the portal yet.
Right. Can I have a follow-up? We applied last week and we did not get funded. Do we need to request us need a grant application or that application for game? How does that work?
You can cut and paste from your old application into the new one, but you will have to paste it in the new one because we did by date times.
And is there a way to get feedback regarding the application? I don't know. What was the reason why we went on it?
So if you go out to your application and you look at the status, the notes will tell you exactly why, what happened to your application, or you can contact me and I can look it up.
That would be great.
And we're always willing to have conversations with folks. Our staff spend lots of time talking to developers about their projects before they apply, which is always the best, because then we can help you work out any of those kinks before we run out of money in the programs. But always as well after, like we have are always willing to meet. That includes myself. Sometimes people come up with great ideas for projects and we don't have a funding source that matches it exactly. It shouldn't stop you from floating your idea up through us, because it often, maybe we'll be able to find some funding to fund it as a pilot, but it also helps inform changes we might make to the program. If we start to hear people like, well, you do this, but your program doesn't work, it helps us to know how we need to have those programs evolve as well. And you can either call us directly with that feedback, you can funnel it through your regional housing partnership or the land bank or other folks as well. Just make sure it gets to us. All right, anything else?
I just want to say thank you. I'm with Market County Habitat for Humanity, and the funding that we have received in 1.0 has just really been game changing for us. We've spent $100,000 on home repair.
Nice.
And we have
a lot of happy families.
A lot of happy families, and we have 300,000 that we're allocating to new housing, and are intending to apply for 3.0. So thank you. This is really significant for us.
Yeah, thank you for doing the work, right? And in the past, probably 10 years, we have not had significant money at the state to invest in the smaller projects and homeowner rehab. We've had some, not as significant. Through a lot of begging, you know, we were able to get CDBG funds for housing and get the state to contribute $50 million a year to our housing trust fund, which is allowing us to be able to kind of get back in the neighborhoods again. You know, when I first started in this industry, which was a long time ago, you know, MSHDA had a lot more money that they put into the neighborhoods. And then it, you know, got diverted a lot to multifamily. So we're happy that we have funding now that we can kind of get back and do that kind of more comprehensive community development work and make sure that everybody's taking advantage of our programs. Yeah.
Okay, my name is Mindy and I'm with the Dickinson Area Economic Development Alliance. So we're in the same region as Marquette when it comes to my neighborhood. There's some of us that are smaller communities. And I'm just curious if the 3.0 will still be like a rolling basis that they're accepted as they come in, or if there's consideration to spreading out the funding within a region.
You know, we were just talking about how we might change it up. You know, we were started with first come, first serve because we were in a housing crisis and we just need to get the money out the door to get housing built. But there are thoughts of changing that up, right? And so if you have ideas, you should make sure that we know, because I think we have a meeting, or we're gonna have a meeting in the next couple of weeks to talk about whether we change it and have a round where everyone puts their applications in, and then we can evaluate kind of applications against each other projects so that we can make sure there's a little bit more distribution, or not. So I'm assuming you want us to maybe go that route.
Possibly, and I think as Victoria, she's from a smaller community as well, same region. Yeah. We do have smaller developers that are very eager to do projects in our communities. It just feels unattainable.
Okay.
It's a little bit, you know, a capacity issue too, like as a part of it, but also a newer developer, a smaller developer that wants to do something is just learning the application as they go. And it's been great to have the Great Lakes Housing Services.
Oh, good.
That helped. But when we're competing against Marquette, it's a struggle. It feels like a struggle.
Okay, we've heard. And we'll make the change. I can tell you that I've had many staff that would like us to change it. So you never know. That's good to hear. That's great feedback. That's exactly why we're doing these listening tours. Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Sorry we were running right up on a time frame, but.
Great. So responsive. So thank you. We have sandwiches. I'm sorry I didn't mention it before Amy started speaking, so you could be chowing while she was speaking, but feel free to break and get those. So thank you. Thanks for coming out.
Can I end the meeting? I think so.